Yesterday, we told you that Trump was considering it, and tonight it's happening. The president isn't just talking about designating Antifa as domestic terrorists. The machinery now in motion. Attorney General Pam Bondi has RICO investigators building cases that reach all the way up to the billionaire class. But while Trump tightens the noose, the streets are exploding with new footage that proves exactly why this designation is long overdue. BLM protesters in New York openly chanting death threats. Undercover journalists have exposed military-style training camps. And the money trail? It leads exactly where you think it does. The establishment media said Antifa was a myth. Well, tonight, we'll show you why that lie just died. Now, a 2025 survey found that over half of U.S. adults are concerned about how fast their skin is aging and 40% fixate on random wrinkles or dark spots. If it sounds like you're not alone. More and more people are noticing visible changes in their skin far earlier than expected. This is why I use my secret anti-aging weapon, and I'm obsessed with the changes I've noticed in my skin. It provides my skin with 5 must-have types of premium collagen needed to help reduce wrinkles. Since taking it, I've experienced smoother skin, more elasticity, fewer fine lines, and a more youthful glow. Plus, it mixes smoothly with my morning coffee. No taste or clumps. Be sure to grab a bag of ageless multi-collagen on your way out of this program. Well, it's 51% off at healthwithgary.com and help take the years off the clock. We thank our sponsors for making this show possible. Now, back on September 12th, President Trump joined Fox and Friends. He says that George Soros and his entire network will be investigated under RICO charges, claiming Soros is behind the funding, training, and radicalization of young people, fueling terror and extremism. Now, this was just a day after the Charlie Kirk assassination, 2 days after. So everyone is looking for the source of this hatred. And of course, as the investigation has unfolded, we have found that the shooter, Tyler Robinson, had anti-fascist messages engraved on the bullets, connecting him or his ideology directly to the groups that have been wreaking havoc across the United States. President Trump knows this. Kash Patel knows this. Ted Cruz knows this, you know this, and I know this.
That because we have
I had one the other night. I went into a restaurant, and this woman stood up. I looked at her immediately. She had money. She wasn't. They get paid for it. They're professional from Soros and other people. And we're going to look into Soros because I think it's a RICO case against him and other people. Because this is more than like protests. This is real agitation. This is riots on the street. And we're going to look into that.
What do we do about our country with that? Because we have radicals on the right.
I had one the other night. I went into a restaurant, and this woman stood. I had one
the radicals are freaking out. Do you know who Brian Krasenstein is? Do you know who he is? Yeah, he's a notorious left-wing troll on X, financed by the radical left. After President Trump made the statement that I'm pleased to inform our many USA patriots, I'm designating Antifa a sick, dangerous, radical left disaster as a major terrorist organization. We'll be strongly recommending those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So there you see it right there on your screen. President Trump designated Antifa a major terrorist organization. Well, Brian Krasenstein, what do you have to say? He went out and declared that he's Antifa. This is the standard operating procedure of these deranged leftists who try to just say, oh, it's just an idea. It's not a group. It's just an idea. It's just people thinking about it. He writes, I am Antifa, meaning I am against fascism. All Americans should be. Antifa is not an organization. Domestic groups also cannot be formally designated as terrorist organizations under U.S. law. Trump did not have the legal authority to unilaterally designate Antifa as a terrorist organization. No federal statute allows for a president to make such a designation domestically. So I proudly went ahead and I said, well, guess what? I'm anti-Kraz, meaning I'm against the Krasensteins. All Americans should be. Anti-Kraz is not an organization. It's common sense. Professional trolls cannot be formally designated as patriots under U.S. law. Krasnsteins did not have moral authority to unilaterally crown themselves spokesmen for America. No statute allows a Twitter grifter to masquerade as a movement while pushing propaganda. And here's an AI-generated picture I made of myself last night with my anti-Kraz logo on my T-shirt. Yeah, spray painting it just like they do. A little bit of humor for you. 3 hours ago, Air Force One, Eric Doherty posting this. LMAO, funniest president ever. He writes, the reporter asked President Trump regarding Antifa being a terrorist organization. Uh-oh, what happened next?
They don't have, regarding Antifa, what you posted. That NPR, sir. Regarding
Are they still here?
They are?
Are they still here? Oh, good. Congratulations.
Regarding designating them a terrorist organization, when they don't have defined leadership or membership, how do you target them?
Who doesn't?
Antifa.
We're going to find out, right? We're going to see. People have been talking about it for a long time. We're going to see. Did they have anything to do with your network? Antifa?
No.
Okay. But we're going to find out.
Regarding Antifa, what you posted.
Did they have anything to do with your network? NPR? What? How are they on Air Force One? I thought they were defunded into oblivion. Oh, good. Congratulations. Not for long. So the reporter is trying to say, like, how do you target Antifa? You know, there's just an idea. They don't have an organizational roster. Oh, they don't? Trump says, we're going to find out. I mean, how do they not have an organizational roster when they are publicly posting flyers, they're hosting events, they're telling people and directing people to go to events, wearing full black bloc and just wreaking havoc, burning down buildings, attacking people, destroying storefronts, right? That is organized terror. Okay, that is the definition of domestic terrorism. They are inflicting fear on the streets of the cities in order to reach a political goal. Political domestic terrorism. I mean, if these people can't, I mean, it's NPR, I mean, of course they can't see it. They're blinded by their own ideology, and that's why President Trump just went ahead and said, you're not going to be here for long. Trump said he's looking into designating Antifa and other left-wing groups as domestic terror organizations. This was 72 hours ago. He's been working with AG Bondi on RICO charges for those funding these groups, meaning George Soros, because Trump has had enough. Let's flash back 72 hours, just before the moment that Antifa was designated.
Do that 100.
Given with all the that's going on, with Charlie Kirk's assassination and the left-wing violence going on, do you have plans? And actually, this is a great opportunity with all these. Do you plan on designating Antifa finally a domestic terror organization?
Well, it's something I would do, yeah. If I have support from the people back here, I think we'd start with Pam, I think. But I would, if you give me, I would do that 100%. And others also, by the way. But Antifa is terrible.
Are there other groups that you can think of?
There are other groups, yeah. There are other groups. We have some pretty radical groups, and they got away with murder. And also, I've been speaking to the Attorney General about bringing RICO against some of the people that you've been reading about that have been putting up millions and millions of dollars for agitation. These aren't protests. These are crimes, what they're doing, where they're throwing bricks at cars of ICE and Border Patrol. And
Given with all the that's going on.
So their days are numbered. This is only the beginning of this investigation. Andy Ngo, who has been targeted, almost died at the hands of Antifa, posted this 17 hours ago. Antifa doesn't exist? Then who beat me on the head with fiberglass gloves and made my brain bleed? Who assassinated Aaron Danielson in downtown Portland? Who tried to blow up the Tacoma ICE facility? Who shot an officer in the neck at the Texas ICE facility? He is on with Real America's Voice. Let's listen.
Reinforce.
Let me show people some video of you right in the middle of Antifa. This is not First Amendment rights. they are attacking you. They end up coming in here in a moment and they'll start punching you. And Andy, no, as we watch this video, Democrats want to tell us Antifa doesn't exist. They just punched you in the face here.
Yeah, not only did they punch me on the face and head, they were wearing gloves that were reinforced with fiberglass so that my brain bled and I was hospitalized and nearly died. So I would like to tell that story to the Democrats. I would like to tell them about the stories of people who have been killed by Antifa, like Aaron Danielson in Portland, Oregon in 2020, who was a Trump supporter who was assassinated by an Antifa gunman who left behind a manifesto and made references to Antifa, very similar to Antifa references, by the way, on the rifle cartridges that were found near the Charlie Kirk assassination site.
You see, this is all connected. Here's more from Andy No on One America's News. He lays out the vision for it to be practically enforced.
That can be used.
How does the Trump's terrorist designation actually get enforced?
Good question. So what can be done is at the federal level, there are RICO charges that can be used, conspiracy charges. People don't actually know that it's a federal crime, for example, to issue threats of bodily injury in interstate communications. There are so many tools at the disposal right now. You don't need new legislation that can actually really seriously hamper the organizing efforts of Antifa. Some of the Antifa groups have ties to international Antifa. There's actual group called International Antifa, and they operate outside of the U.S. When you bring in an international element there, immediately what can be applied is the anti-terrorism legislation that exists in the post-9/11 world. So there are tools there. It's going to be hard. You can see, we can imagine it right now. The ACLU, everyone's going to line up to try to protect Antifa in the courts. They're going to try to get injunctions placed, arguing that this is going against the First Amendment and free speech. It's not free speech to organize violent crime.
How does...
Yeah, it's not free speech. Okay? That is straight up terrorism. A new investigative journalist, Dr. Carolyn B. went undercover with Antifa, and she says it's a military operation. They bring in people with military experience to lead sessions. Antifa trains people how to get arrested. Okay, check it out.
Trainings.
Carlin Borisenko is an undercover investigative journalist for Decode the Left who's infiltrated these terror cells. Carlin, tell me about how these people train. They look pretty militaristic.
Yeah, absolutely. They do have sessions where they bring in people with military experience. Anti-war is a very big thing for Antifa, so they do hand-to-hand combat trainings. I was just undercover with them in New York City over the weekend, where they had a whole self-defense class where they were teaching people how to violently, confront the police, but also defend themselves if they needed to be put in that position.
And why do they always get out of jail so quickly? You see all these people get popped, they get bailed right out, and charges never stick. How is that?
Well, Antifa, actually, they train people on how to get arrested. And it's interesting with far left subcultures because they actually volunteer to get arrested and go through this type of training where they are provided legal support, they are provided lawyers, they are provided all of this stuff with mutual aid. And so as soon as they get arrested, Antifa basically goes down to the jail and they bail them out, and they are all set up with a lawyer and ready to go. So they plan all of this stuff out ahead of time, and they have the resources set up for people to be able to be taken care of.
Yeah, I mean, obviously someone's paying for their legal representation. What is the core mission of Antifa? Is it anarchy? Are they anarchists?
Yeah, Antifa are anarchists. Their primary goal is the violent overthrow of the federal government. I cannot emphasize this enough. We've been hearing a lot of talk about civil war over the last couple years between Democrats and Republicans, red versus blue. I firmly believe that the real civil war we have coming is the radical revolutionary socialists and communists in Antifa versus the federal government. That is their goal. That is their only goal. And people need to start taking this problem very, very seriously.
And President Trump is taking it seriously. Here from the Skiff, Alex Soros warned to cut ties with extremists and their groups. Two specific groups tied to the Open Society that were specifically named to cut ties were a group called Indivisible and Move On. Remember MoveOn.org? These are both connected to Antifa-related violent protests, riots, major crimes, and domestic terrorist operations. These are just 3 well-known groups out of over 54 major groups and possibly hundreds of subgroups around the world. If Soros continues to fund these groups, they'll experience the full force of the federal government tearing into everything they're involved with, including all their finances and then some. Another angle being explored is through the IRS, what corners were cut, where they're hiding or laundering the money, and if illegal operations and crimes are where the money is mostly coming from in the first place in connection to these groups. Remember when John Gotti, Al Capone were convicted for tax-related offenses, Al Capone famously going down for tax evasion in 1931 after being untouchable by other charges. John Gotti being convicted in 92 on racketeering charges related to his failure to file tax returns and conspiracy to defraud the government. Sometimes justice might not always look like you expect it to, but it will come one way or another. Quote, we urged Alex Soros to end funding for Indivisible and move on the groups behind violent anti-Trump protests. If not, the feds should scrutinize his foundation, end quote, Peter Flaherty. They will tear into everything and everybody, including where the money comes from, where it goes, every single group in the U.S. and abroad, all the way down to who dropped off the pallets of bricks to riot with. Listen to this.
This kind of mess. Last week, we sent a letter to Alex Soros, who chairs the Soros Foundation. Daddy Soros put his son in charge of it a couple of years ago. And we made a very simple request that the Open Society Foundations, so-called, end their financial support for 2 groups in particular, Indivisible and Move On. These are the primary organizers of these nationwide campaigns. We've seen the messaging from both the organizers and the participants is always that Trump is a fascist, he's a Hitler, his supporters are extremists and white supremacists. And this kind of messaging has been persistent. And we've seen it in their so-called No Kings protest days, and we've seen it during the Tesla takedown protests, which was accompanied by all the violence, the arson, the vandalism of Teslas, and so forth. So the point I would make to Alex Soros is if you don't want the federal government pouring over your books, why don't you do the socially responsible thing and end support for these 2 groups?
Is there a way that we can legally kick their influence out of the country?
Well, you know, the president can do some things that he's not done yet. One of them is to appoint an effective commissioner of the IRS. He appointed a former congressman named Billy Long. He lasted 2 months. The post is presently vacant. The tax-exempt division of the IRS, which has oversight of groups like Soros's foundation, is largely ineffective. There's no revenue in it, usually, for the IRS, so it's been neglected over the years. The last effective head of the tax-exempt division we had was Lois Lerner, and she was effective for all the wrong reasons. Yeah. President Trump should appoint an IRS commissioner who's committed to even-handed application of the law. We believe that there are many, many violations of the tax-exempt status of the groups that George Soros is funding.
I want to ask you, because of your experience in the terrorism field at the FBI, I want to ask you about the designation of Antifa as a terrorist organization. We saw what they did in the Summer of Love back in 2020 following George Floyd riots. And even before that, burning down cities, burning down police precincts. President Trump was sent to a bunker because of their activity just across the street from the White House. When it comes to, because I know President Trump has spoken to Attorney General Pam Bondi about possibly bringing RICO charges against some of these organizations because of that pyramid structure of them and obviously their donors at the top. Do you think that that is a smart way to go?
Yeah, I definitely do think that can be productive with designating them an actual terrorist group. I'm more familiar with that on the international terrorism side with the Immigration and Nationality Act, Section 219. I think there could be potential pay dirt here because Antifa did originally start in Europe. So if they could find some way to internationally connect them with groups in Europe, I think it'll go a long way in helping them to actually designate the organization as a terrorist organization if they can establish that international tie, and then they can get more focus on them. And obviously you want to go towards the funding. Like during the Summer of Love, we had pallets of bricks showing up, and nobody knew where these pallets of bricks were showing up on the edge of towns across the nation. It was like a big mystery, which was shocking to a lot of us internally as to why are we not investigating this? Like, why are we not trying to figure out where these pallets of bricks are coming from that, you know, these rioters are then using against police officers or to destroy property?
Did we ever look into that, by the way, the pallets of bricks? I mean, I feel like it feels like everything is under surveillance these days. That seems like some pretty low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, it is some pretty low-hanging fruit, and that's why President Trump's designating them a terrorist organization, and RICO charges are on the way. If you got value from this report, tap subscribe. My final thought is next. Now, this isn't yesterday's warning anymore. It's today's war declaration. When Trump moves to designate Antifa as domestic terrorists and unleash RICO on their puppet masters, we're witnessing the death of a lie. For years, they told you Antifa was an idea. Andy Ngo's brain bleed wasn't an idea. Aaron Danielson murder wasn't an idea. The attempted bombing of ICE facilities wasn't an idea. These are acts of war by a Soros-funded paramilitary force, and Trump just called their bluff. Okay? The undercover work you saw? Exposing the truth. Military veterans training street soldiers, jail operatives, coordinating releases, bail funds, keeping terrorists on the streets. So here's the question. Should Trump immediately freeze all assets to organizations funding Antifa like Soros? Drop a yes or no. Sound off below. The days of billionaires financing Americans' chaos while hiding behind NGOs just ended. RICO doesn't care about your nonprofit status. But if you want to support us, you can check out our merch shop and show where you stand in this war for American streets.